Welcome back. It is now time for the question and answer session. Lieutenant Commander Meredith Pyle and Dr. Janet Wilson will read the questions.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, we will try to address as many questions as possible during the time remaining. If we do not address your question today, please email it to the agency that you would like clarification from. The first question is for Fish and Wildlife, and the question is, they would like some clarification about the monkey cells being shipped to Romania. Do we need an export license from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service?
If the purpose is for trade, yes. And if you mean just a license, import-export license, if it's for trade, yes. But it also requires a CITES permit.
Next question is for Department of Transportation. Is non-infectious animal tissue classified as UN 3373 Category B for shipping purposes?
Your first words gave it away that they're non-infectious. We do not regulate non-infectious materials.
The next question is for multiple people. Do you need a permit for investigational new drugs? Are they exempt from requirements under FDA regulations?
Investigational products. For investigational products, we do not issue importation permits at FDA. So basically that determination would need to be made by our sister agencies such as CDC or USDA.
If the IND is not approved by the FDA, then a permit would be required for an investigation if it's a biologic from the CDC Import Permit Program.
IND or no IND, livestock or poultry pathogens, materials that have been exposed to animal products require a permit from APHIS.
IND really only applies to vaccines for human or veterinary use, and the countries that require export licensed vaccines is very few. But if it was to one of those countries, yes, you would need an export license.
The next question is for DOT. How do you differentiate Category A versus Category B infectious agents when shipping infectious agents?
The differentiation between A and B is listed in the definition sections of 173.134, 173.196. These are the standard designations of what extent the material will have on you as an infectious substance capable of killing, capable of giving you extreme bad health, etc., versus Cat B being a little bit less serious, i.e. you could be carrying around a Cat B infectious virus cold today, but it's not going to harm you or become an infectious thing where it spreads because you're sitting next to someone. But these definitions are in the regulations, and you as the transporter must do the proper classification for this. The DOT does not classify materials and or their severity. So it is up to the shipper to maintain and do the classification and select the packaging accordingly.
I've also had a request, if everyone could be sure to speak directly into the microphone. They're having some difficulty hearing. The next question is for CDC. Who writes the statement certifying that a shipment is non-infectious? Do we send it to the CDC once it is written?
It's written by the importer, or it can be the sender, and it's under certain circumstances you can send it to the CDC for review, but typically it's not necessary.
Next question's for DOT. What are the DOT requirements for student researchers importing samples in their personal vehicles or by commercial airlines, hand-carried? Do they require hazmat training?
Yes, they should have some hazmat training. We're speaking more than likely they are more than just a courier type person, but anyone transporting hazardous material, causing it to be transported, carrying it in and of itself, yes, they must be hazmat trained.
Next question's for ASPR. When does ASPR get involved in the permitting process for an agent? Who can I contact to request samples that have been imported into the U.S.?
Okay, so to be clear, ASPR is not now, nor does it seek to be a regulatory agency. So, I don't think that's the direct thrust of the question, but just to be clear for everybody, we have no regulatory mandate, and the processes I described don't seek to give us any way to short circuit all the processes you've heard up here. The short answer is that we will work to get samples related to pathogens capable of causing a public health emergency into the country and into the U.S. government system on a priority basis. That's our main focus. Then what we've done in the Zika context is we turn those materials over to biorepositories that, as part of their everyday function, send materials out. So for things like viruses that can be propagated, those were sent to the biorepositories. They have propagated those viruses and are now sending virus samples to requesters on a first-come, first-served basis. Similarly, once we have enough other related sample material, blood, urine, whatever the case may be, we would send any excess to biorepositories, and that would be the place that people would go to request those materials. This is an N of 1, but I suspect that this is the process that we'll use moving forward for this.
The next question's for Fish and Wildlife. Do both the exporter and importer have to obtain a CITES permit to ship the Vero cell line? If the exporter already has this permit, would we in the U.S. still have to obtain the permit as well?
CITES permits are issued based upon the protection level of the animal. So if it is an Appendix 2 listed animal, then the CITES permit is obtained from the exporting country. If it is an Appendix 1 listed animal, then an import permit from the U.S. and also a CITES export permit is required.
Next question goes to Canada. Can U.S. citizens get security clearance to work with SSBA in Canada?
Yes, it is possible for foreign students and foreign researchers to come in Canada and work with an institution, and they are able to get a security or HPTA security clearance to be able to work in this part of the facility with the sensitive biological agent. It is possible. It is a bit longer process because we have to verify with the country of origin the security. So we have to look with the organization of that country to make sure that they are okay and they can vouch for the criminal records and things like that. So for U.S. example, it should be simpler, but there are some countries where it's more difficult to get that vouch from the country. But yes.
Next question's for DOT. Are known shippers required to put the proper shipping name on the outside of the box? They've had an airline carrier refuse Category A shipments because the proper shipping name was not on the outside, but the dangerous goods declaration indicates suspected category A, and the box is properly labeled.
Yes, this is all part of the communication process, whether it's information on the shipping paper or the package, but the package must have your infectious substance label on there, the proper shipping name, and UN identification number on it, which is totally separate from the shipping paper, but it has all that information too. So yes, the pilot did have a right to question that since it was missing it. So yes, it must be on the package.
Next question's for Department of Commerce. Do we need a DOC permit to send tissues for potential collaborative research obtained from animals intentionally infected with Andes virus from the United States to Peru? The animal may or may not have developed systemic infection. Andes virus has not been isolated from these samples.
It's likely you might. You said Andes virus, right? So I believe that is. I'm pretty sure that's on our list. I know most of them, but not all of them. So if it is on the list and they were deliberately infected with the Andes virus, we would want you to get a shipment. And you would also probably want to check to make sure that it wasn't a cell line that wildlife might have some influence on if you were going to be doing trade.
On the APHIS side, I work for organisms and vectors permitting, but we do have an animal products export group. So depending on what the material is, you might want to check with them as well.
The next question is for multiple responses. What are the requirements for exporting a U.S. licensed biological product with U.S. labeling to foreign countries requesting the product, but where the product is not licensed? Can the same product lot be distributed to both the U.S. and the unlicensed countries?
Could you repeat the question? I just want to make sure that I try to address everything.
Sure. What are the requirements for exporting a U.S. licensed biological product with U.S. labeling to foreign countries requesting the product, but where the product is not licensed? Can the same product lot be distributed to both the U.S. and the unlicensed countries?
Okay, thank you. U.S. licensed product is covered by biological license, okay? And in that biological license, there's specific criteria spelled out in that license, basically manufacturing, labeling, other individuals that may be involved in the manufacturing by contract manufacturing. So if that product bears the U.S. license and meets all of that criteria, it can be exported as long as the importing country agrees to it. There's no law restricting a licensed biological product to be exported or imported into the United States. Did I address all the questions? I hope. Was there anything else on there? Okay.
And from the commerce perspective, if it needed a license, we would license it, and it would be up to the receiving people to make sure that they were going to use it for proper use.
Next question is also to open for multiple responses. Our receiving department is moving to another address nearby, but our laboratory will remain at the address on the permit. Do we need to get a new permit with the receiving department's address?
For the CDC Import Permit Program, wherever the package will be sent to, that address should be on the permit. And if it's an infectious material, and we expect that material to go to the laboratory, we don't expect it to go to an office location or any place that's not capable of housing and securing the infectious material.
From an export perspective, when companies move locations, they do need to file a company location change. And there are certain address changes of people who are receiving biological items that also require a reporting thing. So sometimes it's just best just to call and ask.
From the APHIS perspective, there may need to be an amendment made to the permit. And as Glenn was saying, maybe an email should be sent first to ov@aphis.usda.gov so we can clarify. Thanks.
If they hold a license or a permit with the Fish and Wildlife Service, then they need to make sure that whatever's on the face of the permit matches their current location. So they may require an amendment.
The next question goes out to the entire panel. Could you please explain in more depth the denied parties, entities, or disbarred parties lists with respect to foreign entities or persons that request regulated research materials for their research projects?
On the denied parties list and the entities list and all those things, they will have reasons for denial, and then sometimes they will say assumption of denial, in which case you can anticipate that you will not be able to send to that person. Sometimes it's on a case-by-case basis, so if the entity is, say, a university, and it says denial, but on a case-by-case basis, I would encourage you to go ahead and apply, because you may be able to, we may be able to help you with that. But if it's like presumption of denial, it's not likely, no matter what you want to send, that it will go through.
The next question also goes out to the entire panel. Is there a way for researchers and manufacturers to be aware of import-export tiger teams in place for emerging pathogens, such as Zika, to become quickly aware of new or different permitting requirements?
I'll speak up and say that I don't understand the question.
I suspect it was directed to me. So maybe the most direct way is to, again, reiterate that nothing I described is key. ASPR does not have the authority, nor does it seek the authority to bypass any of the regulatory pathways that have been described to you if you are in the academic or commercial space. Our primary interest is in developing an internal process to facilitate the acquisition of material related to pathogens capable of causing a public health emergency. So that's our primary motivation, is to get that in, again, to the U.S. government system. We then, in an effort to promote the ability of the commercial sector and others to study those materials, we would then turn them over to biorepositories to make them available once we've met our immediate U.S. government needs. But because it's meant to be an internal process, there is no plan to post publicly on a website that that anything has changed, because the processes we're talking about aren't relevant to commercial or academic entities seeking to export something immediately. But the point is taken about how people will know when we might be using a different simple letter agreement. I guess the answer there is that they'll know when they contact biorepositories to request those materials. And generally what we're talking about are terms that are more free and more advantageous than they would otherwise be expecting. So no one should anticipate that they're suddenly going to have more restrictive terms or it's going to be more difficult for them to obtain material. In fact, the intent is just the opposite.
The next question is for the entire panel. Can you get a permit to hand carry infectious material onto a plane? Are there any regulations that do not allow for hand carrying material onto a flight?
No, you cannot hand carry infectious material on a plane, and I don't know the regulation that I think it's a FAA regulation about that.
That is very correct there, that any infectious material / hazmat must be recognized by the pilot in command by notification, but not hand carried. It must go into the cargo bay.
And this will be our last question, and it's open to the entire panel. Do you maintain a list of agents that require a permit? Where is it located? If not, how can I determine if a permit is required and what agencies to contact?
There is no current list of agents. That list will be extremely extensive, and it would change with time with the emerging pathogens that we see almost annually. So there is no there is no list to refer to.
Organisms and Vectors has a short list of a few organisms that are pathogenic to livestock and poultry, but as Glenn just said, that list is a never-ending list. And we rely on the applicant to note the specifics of the materials that they're getting. So it's the applicant's responsibility to know whether that material is a human or livestock poultry pathogen.
For export control, you can go to www.bis.doc.gov and look under the Common Control List under Category 1. And the agents that you need to be concerned about are listed under ECCN 1C351 and 1C354.
Okay, thank you. And again, if we have failed to address your question, please email your questions directly to the agency that you would like to contact. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for the closing remarks by our very own Division of Select Agents and Toxins Deputy Director, Mark Hemphill.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Hemphill, the Deputy Director of the Division of Select Agents and Toxins at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In providing the closing remarks today, I would like to acknowledge the federal partners of the Import-Export Regulations webcast that participated in this webcast, and our international partners as well, and presenters. The list is lengthy, but quickly, I would like to acknowledge each department in their respective agency: the Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, the Department of Commerce, Bureau of Industry and Security, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Department of Transportation, Office of Hazardous Material Safety, the Health and Human Services Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, the Food and Drug Administration Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, our CDC colleagues from the Division of Global Migration and Quarantine, and the Public Health Agency of Canada. We are very pleased this year to have participation from two new organizations, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and our international colleagues from the Public Health Agency of Canada. I want to thank all the presenters for taking time out of your very busy schedules to participate in this webcast. It's much appreciated. Thank you for being here. I also want to recognize Vaughn McClee, the CDC Import Permit Branch Chief, and Diane Martin, the Division Training Coordinator, for making today's webcast possible. For those that registered and listened to this two-day webcast, I hope this webcast provided you with a better understanding of the regulatory requirements for the import and export of substances, vectors, or animals that contain or may contain a human pathogen, an agricultural pest, or an agricultural pathogen. I also hope this webcast gave you a better appreciation of why these regulations are important for the safety and security of our country. This is our fourth webcast devoted to the import and export regulations. There were approximately 450 that registered for today's webcast. We want to hear from you so that we may improve future webcasts to meet your needs. Those that registered for this webcast will receive an email shortly with a link to a survey. Please take a moment to complete the survey and provide us your valuable feedback on today's webcast. And lastly, a video of today's webcast, the PowerPoint presentations of the speakers, and the answers to the questions that we received from you during today's program will be posted on the CDC Division of Select Agents and Toxins Import Permit Program website. Those that registered for this webcast will receive an email notification when the material is posted on this website. On behalf of everyone that made today's webcast possible, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this important information and to ask questions. This concludes the 2016 Federal Partners Import and Export Regulations webcast. Thank you.